Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Madam Arseha binti Karimon, your lecturer for chapter number 3. Oh, what is chapter number 3 all about? Chapter number 3 is about history. I know some of you don't like history at all, but I will make sure this time will be interesting. What we learn today is about historical appreciation of art and sign of typography. Early typography 1. Okay, before we start, we go through for the content overview. Okay, before we go to content overview, I want to tell you what you get of the end of this course. At the end of this course, students should be able to recognize the current trend of typography available in various mediums. Students also can demonstrate creativity and value typography as a source of inspiration in developing graphic and digital media works. Students also can construct new typography idea and invention based on implementation of typography knowledge. Alright. In this topic, we will learn about early typography 1, ending ancient customs, pattern poems, orchestrating the page music, futurism. And next, early typography 2, Russian typographic revolution, Dada, Tsarist to avant-garde, distill. The third one is the new typography, the Bauhaus typography, and Jan Schickel. We will start with ending ancient customs. Words are arranged in horizontal rows that read from left to right, with the row being justified and centered with margin of varied widths. Usually, headlines were a little bit bigger than the text, and occasionally, an initial cap was added for aesthetic purpose. Designers of the arts and craft movement in the 19th century ordered page layout in accordance with the pre-Renaissance tradition of symmetry and beauty. However, several poets and authors at the same time were rejecting the past and breaking convention. They looked for alternative placement and hierarchies to represent the meaning of their words in order to express meaning in a free verse that was not constrained by the typical rhyme, theme, and pattern. This is example number 2, picture number 2. The work of this pioneer is today referred to as concrete poetry, a piece from the 1970s that described the arrangements of letters to increase significance in the poem or piece of prose or some notes. Pattern poems. The earliest pattern poems, which are composed of words organized to form patterns or certain forms related to the poem's subject matter, were brought from the Far East to Greece. Pattern poetry reached their height of originality during the Renaissance and continued until the 17th century. One Wings of Eros, writing by Simmias of Rhodes in 300 before century and depicted above in a 16th century version, is one of the earliest surviving examples. Pattern poetry, also called figure poem, shape verse, or common figuratum, verse in which typography or line were arranged in an unusual configuration, usually to convey or extend the emotional contents of words. Pattern poetry is the name of the ancient form of concrete poetry. Orchestrating the page music. By giving things or picture a symbolic significance, symbolized poet aims to provoke a certain emotion in the reader. Stephen Mallarmé, 1842 to 1898, a symbolic poet, united the left and right pages of his 20-page poem. A throw of dice will never abolish change into one space, structuring it as 4 movements of a symphony, a musical score for anyone willing to recite it aloud. He crafted the reader experience by highlighting words in a variety of font, Roman, italic, all capitals, size and style, with the intention that the white space serve as a silent interlude. This work is frequently acknowledged as the inspiration for the 20th century futurist and modern typography experimentation. James Whistler, a painter who was acquainted with the Mallarmé, regularly used terminology like nocturne or harmony in the names of his paintings, and, like his body, drew comparison between his art and music. Whistler includes visual balance into his painting, print, and book design. He used double-page spreads and carefully examined the use of white space with the asymmetrical balance in his 1890 masterpiece. The gentle art of making enemies in the 1960s. This is an example of the artwork. The title is The Gentle Art of Making Enemies. In the 1960s, Belgian artist Marcel Brocher reinterpreted the rhythm of Mallarmé poem by replacing all the words with a solid bars. Futurism. The first Futurist Manifesto, which was written by the movement founder and leading advocate Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, just before World War I, declared the end of the past art and the beginning of the future art, Le Futurism. Through the lecture and the publishing of his manifesto, he brought his new aesthetic, which praised speed, violence, industry, and dynamism from Italy to the rest of Europe. Marinetti claims that the birth of Futurism was a direct result of a 1908 vehicle accident in which he crashed in his Bugatti while attempting to evade two cyclists and flew head over heels into a ditch. The first Futurist Manifesto was directly inspired by the experience, and it was published on the front page of the Le Figaro on February 20, 1909. More than just releasing the poetry, Marinetti sought to break with the traditions of book design. I want a revolution in typography to combat the ridiculous and revolting ideas behind the archaic and traditional books, with its handmade paper, garlands, goddess, big initial, mythical plants, and mystery ribbons, epigraph, and Roman numerals from the 17th century. Even more, my revolution is intended against what is known as the typographic harmony of the page, which runs counter to the flow and movement of style. The book must be the futurist representation of our futurist principle. Between 1912 and 1914, fragments of his most famous artwork, Zang Tam Tam, first appeared in journals before being published as an artist book. While serving as a journalist for the New York Times during the Balkan War, Marinetti utilized free verse to convey the feeling of the artillery assault on Adrianople, 1912. He didn't use any verbs or adjectives. Instead, he dispersed nouns throughout the page, giving them significance by the size, weight, and placement, a revolutionary change in style that destroyed liner writing. Marinetti advocated advocated for the destruction of libraries, museums, and schools as part of his strategy to break with the past, as well as the eradication of the smelly gangrene of academicians, archaeologists. Marinette, a supporter of Mussolini, fascist government, tried unsuccessfully to have Futurism recognized as Italy's official art form. In the evening, while lying in bed, she read a letter he had received from her artilleryman serving in the front line, a drawn poetry reimagined in letterpress. Guillaume Apollinaire, a modernist poet, used barely readable cassettes of letters to create circumflute in order to stimulate brain. He called the shape poetry he created calligrams. When it came to typography future, Apollinaire was fairly gloomy. He believed that with the advent of new technologies, typography is nearing a glorious conclusion to its career with the beginning of the new means of reproduction that are the cinema and phonograph. So this is an example of the artwork. Futurist artist Carlo Carla, 1881 to 1966, and Ardengo Soffici, 1979 and 1964, were influenced by Cubism and Futurism, particularly by Picasso and Baroque collage works. This is an example of their work that, published in 1915, convey multiplicity through the use of overlapping covers from several futurist magazines. So we can see they are using mostly a sans serif font and a red color, different type of font, different with a different size. Okay. Picture number 12 and picture number 13 is an example of futurist artist artwork. The graphic revolution of Futurism permeated the entire book rather than just one page. The futurist graphic experimentation in the 1920s and 1930s included the shape, binding, material, printing method of books, which evolved into independent works of art. The Pero Futurist, a collection of the futurist painter, sculptor, and designer Fortunato Di Pero typography experiment, commercial poster, taperies, and other works were released in 1927. The first book object, Di Pero Futurista, was a development in Maritime Futurist typographic movement. The Pero Futurista is also known as a bolted book because it is bound with the two substantial industrial bolts. It is filled with the bold visual experiments, inventive page layout, and work from every creative area. So we can see they are using a big size of font, and it look bold with it look bulky from the image that we can see at the right. We go for the next topic, which is early typography 2. We still in subject GDT 159 typography. I hope you are still interested to hear. You can move your head to the left, you can move your head to the right, and right, left, down, up, to make you refresh. Alright, let me start. Dada, Zurich offered refuge to artists who were escaping the European War in 1916. The worldwide brew produced Dada a post-futurist movement. It was seen as an anti-art trend, yet it gave rise to some colleague and photomontage artists who had an impact on graphic designer in the future. John Hartfield, a virtuoso of collage, dealt with visual, while other advances of typography energy started by futurism. The artwork for the program for the second Paris performance of Tristan Tzar Dadaist play by Ilya Zelenevich 1874 to 1975 is seen above. Paragraph is the use of many fonts and sizes inside a single word of line. A sans serif typeface is the only typeface that is worse than a serif typeface. The Dadaism Marshal Duchamp decided to use stingbat and punctuation instead of letter as to respond to what he deemed the tyranny of the alphabet. The International Dada achieved at the University of Iowa has a wealth of material about Dada available online. This is an example of Dada. We can see there are the different typefaces. Dada. Zurich offered refuge to artists who were escaping the European War in 1916. The worldwide brew produced Dada, a post-futurist movement. It was seen as an anti-art trend, yet it gave rise to some colleague and photomontage artists who had an impact on graphic designer in the future. John Hartfield, a virtuoso of collage, dealt with visual, while other advances of typography energy started by futurism. This is something you see a lot more of these days, yet it still has its own style and twist compared to other works that have been attempted to recreate the arrangement. The typeface is straightforward, powerful, and obvious, but it nevertheless exudes a sense of power and prominence. It seems incredibly intriguing to me because there are so many various type sizes. The distill movement generated a number of commercial posters for the Dave Salad oil factories. Van der Leek created a poster in 1919. Using only black and primary colors, he attempted to represent a human form in this poster using extremely simple geometrical shapes. He completely lost the outline of the person, leaving only sporadic fundamental outlines to represent his form. The text was also subjected to the extreme abstract reduction, which regrettably reduced by readability of the character. The same artist created another well-known poster in 1915 to promote the Mueller shipping line. To structure the poster flat area, the artist employed strong horizontal and vertical bar. Van der Leek's depictions of humans were quite simplistic and include certain distortion and proportion of the human body. The main color palette was used, and the colors were flat. Although this artwork adheres to the core ideas of this style, it is important to note that it was created before the movement was founded. With the assistance of Dadaist Kurt Schwitter, Van Doesburg created his renowned poster for Klein Dada Stories, Small Dada Evening in 1922. The poster dance haphazard arrangement of several fonts served as a texture for the aimless red stem of the word Dada. The basic color scheme is red, black, and white, made it clear that the poster was inspired by the still movement. Dada in this style was seen by Van Doesburg as opposing but complementary movement. Dada will destroy the outdated conventional idea while this still created a brand new one with a fresh foundation. This still made a number of intriguing contributions to the world of book design. The design was regarded as the purest embodiment of the distill principle. The area retains as a symmetrical composition with a flat major section of red, yellow, blue, and white. It is divided into 4 different sized rectangles by 2 orthogonal black bars with white writing covering them. Theo van Doesburg and Piet Mondrian made the decision to broaden the appeal of their flagging movement in 1921. They radically altered the style journal's look in order to do that, adding the Pace International Monthly to the subtitle. Given this, Doesburg created a new journal cover with the word "Distill" inscribed in black above the red bold letter NB, creating the illusion of additional space. Doesburg used just black and white, focusing on the negative space to precisely balance the text inside the asymmetrical composition. This still had one of the most direct effects on typography of any avant-garde groups. The movement's abstraction tenets were also applied to typography, creating a new geometrical perception of the letter. Theo van Doesburg alphabets underwent a crude deformation proceeded to make the letters fill out the square shape. In 1920, Doesburg created a poster for the International Exhibition of Cubist and Neo-Cubist art. He constructed the letter and the entire composition using an orthogonal structure, yet the letter distortion had a negative impact on the character individually and readability. By contrasting the various letter thickness An asymmetrically balanced arrangement was given additional energy of harmony and contrast. In 1920, Tasberg created a poster for the International Exhibition of Cubist and Neo-Cubist art. He constructed the latter and the entire composition using an orthogonal structure, yet the latter distortion had a negative impact on the character individually and readability. By contrasting the various letter thickness, an asymmetrically balanced arrangement was given additional energy of harmony and contrast. As we have seen, these style ideals clearly advocated for a very simple form of communication that practically everyone in the globe could understand. The principle of this style organization, which sought to be an agent of social transformation, clearly mirrored the shift from capitalism to communism. According to some historians, the modernist rejection of the ornaments was primarily due to two factors: the ornament falsity and the peak that they achieved as the extent of their development. If we pay more attention, maybe we can see that this rejection may be a metaphor for the concurrent societal upheavals that occurred at the beginning of the 20th century when the modern world rejected. We go for the next slide, which is the new typography. We're going to start with the Bauhaus typography. The Bauhaus typography, modern graphic and industrial design are particularly credited with their development to the Bauhaus typography. The impact of the German school of the contemporary art world has been extensively covered in articles and studies. In 1919, Walter Gropius founded the Bauhaus School in Weimar. The movement intended to create practical building, architecture, and furniture by utilizing 20th century machine culture. They promote the use of contemporary technology, how the form should follow function, and that the artist and the artisan should work together as one, and place more emphasis on production than pure aesthetic beauty. The Bauhaus School, which promoted sensory type as superior to the ornate German norm of black letter typography because of its more attractive and practical geometric shape typography. This is an example of artwork page from the 1928 NKF Cableworks catalog featuring Piet Zwart using yellow, red and blue color and black typography. Dutch typographer, photographer and industrial designer Piet Zwart created these works. Prior to moving into graphic design, he practiced architecture and developed furniture and interiors. He was not constrained by conventional practice and convention because he lacked professional experience in graphic design, which allowed him to produce something really original. He targeted simplicity and the necessity for direct engagement with the client who are inundated with advertising material, conscious of the media influence. He chose strong font and diagonal lines to draw the viewer's attention and create a layout that distinguished between the design major and secondary message. Vasily Kandinsky, who is he? Instant artistic experimentation took place in between the academic and social realist periods in Russian art. Part of the futurist creed were accepted by Russian author and painter, who then nationalized it by fusing Cubism with Russian mythology and folklore to create the hybrid Cubo-Futurist style. By the time Marinetti traveled to Russia in 1940, he had stated that the people there were not futurists but rather savage. By wearing outrageous apparel and creating contentious works like A Slap in the Face of Public Taste, 1912, the Cubo-Futurists delighted in startling the public. This competition poster was created by John Smith and depicts a cross made of square and circle. The Oscar Schirmer design Bauhaus emblem is included in the cross, which is positioned diagonally. This logo had to be used in the competition proposal, along with details about the events, date, location, and display. The original version of this artwork was shown on 120 German train stations as advertising. One of the founding members of Bauhaus Typography, graphic designer John Smith, also taught at Berlin College of Visual Arts. The Bauhaus outlined the following fundamental rules for typographic communication. The demands of function influence typography. Communication is the goal of typographic layout, for which it is the graphic medium. The shortest, simplest, and most incisive manner of communication must be used. Both internal organization, order content, and exterior organization, the typographic material being appropriately related, are necessary for typography to serve social purpose. Herbert Bayer, with his creation of the Universal Alphabet in 1925, Herbert Bayer is recognized as the founder of Bauhaus typography, with no extra embellishments typical of black-letter typography. Bayer offered the fundamental of a new style of lettering that aimed to simplify letters to their most basic components. He was an advocate for more legible writing, which he achieved through the use of geometrically shaped characters with wider spacing. He did away with the higher and lower case and serif, creating a straightforward yet effective style that is still in use today. All that remains to be asked is why he chose the letter G and K. Was it done to make us confused? Then he was successful. Jan Chikol, German author, type designer, teacher and educator Jan Chikol. He was a big supporter of sans serif fonts and uniform paper size and had a background in calligraphy. He put forward the regulation for standardizing type technique in his work, Die New Typography, but the Penguin Books cover design are his more recognizable creation. Over 500 books were produced under his direction and were released between 1947 and 1949. If you post even one of the books, you might want to break that your own Jan Chikol artwork because he created the iconic cover that we all adore. Chikol's ultimate purpose, like that of Maholi Nagy, was message clarity, and every element on the page was set up to achieve that goal. Traditional layout or box-style layouts are, as he termed them, were monotone and lacked a hierarchy of significance. He relocated to Munich after teaching at the Technical Institution for German Printer in Berlin. He joined Kurt Sweeter's organization, the Circle of New Advertising Designers, in 1927. This individual developed the tenets of what was dubbed the new typography. Despite occasional communication, the group remained far from the Bauhaus, maybe out of concern that one side could supplant the other's identity. Jan Chikol. German author, type designer, teacher and educator Jan Tschicol. He was a big supporter of sans serif fonts and uniform paper size and had a background in calligraphy. He put forward the regulation for standardizing type technique in his work, The New Typography, but the Penguin book's cover design are his more recognizable creation. Over 500 books were produced under his direction and were released between 1947 and 1949. If you post even one of the books, you might want to break that your own Jan Tschicol artwork because he created the iconic cover that we all adore. The new typeface was structured on the following tenets: deliberate use of white space, asymmetrical balance of parts, content developed by hierarchy, and sans serif typography. Okay, at our left side is a picture of Jan Tschicol in black and white. Tschicol becomes a group author and spokesperson. He spread the idea through writing and speaking. A somehow rigid notification that no debate will follow his lecture was placed in advance. The image above shows the cover of Typography, Mittellinien. Elements Typography, a commercial publication published in 1925, where Tschicol exposed German printers to the concept of Russian constructivism and the new typography. Despite of intense debate, the ideas were broadly accepted. Tschicol published 175 essays on the topic of typography over the course of 50 years. He wrote the new typography, his most significant outwork, when he was 26 years old. The book, which is most highly revered, has a black cover written in silver ink and was slanted and very tiny. It was divided into two main sections. The first made an argument for the new typography current adoption by examining its historical foundation. Traditional book designer, in Jan Tschikol's opinion, they outmoded and should be despised. He endorsed Macaulay typophoto Nike strategy and identified photography as the ideal technique for illustration. He believed that the only font that truly complemented photography was sans serif. If you want to get some resource, you can find it from the source image and reference from my slide. Thank you guys.